Hello, this is Neil from mypaintgirls.com and welcome to part 2 of how to draw folds and clothes and stuff. And so this will be going more into the mechanics, more into the why of folds. The how is kind of weird because the how is like how they're moving and stuff like that. Like is their knee bent or is their leg straight? You know, that's kind of the how of it. And the why is kind of why the folds are doing what they're doing when the person is in that particular movement or position. So with the different why, like why folds act the way they do, and then we'll get into where they happen as we go into real examples, is scrunch, stretch, hang, and twist. Those are the different forces that deal with the whys of how, and how we get these different folds. So scrunch basically is compression. So this is one example of a scrunch right here. What you see is that the cloth is being bunched in both directions, or it's being bunched really hard in one direction and it's being stopped, let's say here. And this can happen at the bottom of, let's say, pants, or if a shirt sleeve gets scrunched up a lot, you take the both ends and just squish them toward the center. Any type of material that's a tube, and then you squish it like this. You can also take like a sheet of paper or a sheet of cloth and then scrunch it, and then you'll have all these little overlapping, types of wrinkles, and that will be like a towel or something. And so that's what gets most complicated is when scrunching gets a lot. Or if you have like a shirt, let's say, right, and if you have just it scrunch on one side, like she's bent over like this, and her arm's going over there, and this arm's coming down, then you'll have a bunch here, or a scrunch up, a scrunch here, but it's only on that one side. That side is being stretched, and so you have some stretch lines, let's say, like this. Then you have hang, because it's hanging down and gravity, and she'll have some hang. And then twist, if they're twisting away, you can have some twist type of some wrinkles as well, or in this case we'll call them folds, not wrinkles. Right, so those are the different things to deal with. And so, for example, hang would be if you had a ball and you draped a towel or sheet over that ball, let's say, and it came down. What you'd have then is you'd have some tube type folds here, and then you might have some stretch folds, and you might have a hook fold here at the end. You might have overlapping folds where you have a fold like this and a fold like that, and then you'd have, depending on how long it is, you might have some hang folds, and hang folds would come down and then gravity would take over and they'd kind of go like that. And so example would be kind of like, let's say we had 2 points here, one here and one here, in which the cloth is hanging between, like that. And so you'd have some tugs here, some stretch, then you'd have hanging, like that, and then you might have where this is all kind of coming out at us. So it's kind of a tube, but a bent tube. So it's just the same thing as a tube kind of wrinkle, where it kind of look like this, except it has a bend in it, and it's kind of going thin to thick. And so you can have a mix between hanging and tubes, and you can shade it to make it look like that if you want to really spend the time to do that. And then another one like that and hang. So that's gravity pulling on it, right? So those are different forces. And then twist can get really intense, just depends. So if you have the force of twist, you have a cloth like this, a tubular cloth, and you twist this side that way and twist this side the opposite way, you can have some really twisting type of folds, and they be little tube or crunched up ones, and little stretch ones like that, and then you'd have in between like that. So it would twist the fabric. And that happens, when someone like kind of gets in a weird position with their legs or arms, and it kind of twists the fabric around. All right, so let's go through real examples then, and then we'll also get into the different kinds of edges to memorize and to get good at drawing. That way you can quickly apply those different edges. There's not very many of them, and then there's just little variations on those edges, and we'll get into that. But first we are going to draw a shirt on this person here. And the person's kind of coming up at us, that's the perspective there. And I'm going to even change the color. Maybe kind of a bluish. Right, so let's go ahead and start drawing the clothing. And we'll make it like a t-shirt or something. So one thing we could do is we can get the line working here. And this is, it's just important to memorize or to have some shirt patterns just in case you forget where the seams are. That is, there's a tubular, there's a fabric that the fabric is like this, whatever, and it wraps around making a tube, and then it connects here to the shirt. So you have these seams here. You have another seam on the top here. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. And then you'll have another seam on the shirt somewhere. Usually it's on the underside, right in here. Kind of try to hide it in the inside of the arm. And then think that's all the seams. And then there's seams on the sides of the shirt here and here. So just remember where the seams are, how the individual pieces of cloth are cut and sewn together. It will help you when you're drawing the clothes. So one thing we know is you might have a little, we can have a hook wrinkle here, maybe a stretch wrinkle because it's pulling here because of the seam. You usually get little stretch wrinkles and sometimes little hook wrinkles like that in that area. Because of the neck, and you have the collar. And what's important about the collar, I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. Oh wow, look how horrible those lines look because how far away I was. That's why whenever you're inking in Photoshop, you need to zoom way in so you get nice, crisp, clean lines. Otherwise you get yucky looking lines like that. So anyway, the collar, what's important to remember is that the collar is three-dimensional, and you want to think of that 3 dimensions. It's rolling over and around behind the person, and so you want to show that by having a little bit of the collar show through like that. And let's see, that's the collar, and then you have that come, oops, like that. Okay, you might have a couple, sometimes little stretch marks within here. Then you might have just a couple within here like that, and you can even make a shape like this if you wanted to. Those shapes are cool and they look kind of neat, especially when you're inking and stuff. Finally, the breast. So you're going to have pull marks here, to kind of, and also this will help you kind of shape the breast. And sometimes you'll get a full-on, we need a name for these kinds of wrinkles right there. It's kind of like a tube, sort of, because this is a full piece of fabric that's coming out in 3D. So if I were to shade this to make it look like that, you'd have a little bit of shading along the ground there, and then you'd have, not the ground, but the underside. Since we're using ink pen, I'll have to do it like this. Like that, right? So that way it'd be shaded like that and that to look like, it's three-dimensional. It's coming like this, right? So that's important to know. Then you'd have the kind of cloth coming around. I should probably zoom in, do that line again. So you have to really be zoomed in when you're doing inking. I should drew this whole thing smaller actually. Okay, now you're going to have some marks maybe coming right in here, and then you might have, just depends how detail you want to get. I don't want to get too detailed. Okay, something like that. Maybe a line there. Usually there's a line right here where the nipples are, like kind of just crease it like that. Just looks cool, and you can maybe crease one, coming like right around there to kind of show the exchange. That way it looks like the breasts are coming out even though they're not there. Then lastly, it's how you shade, and so all that I would shade with, and like that right there, I would shade all this in with the color I shade with. When I actually start doing my colors, that would be my darker color. If you've ever seen how I do my comics. Right, so that would all be shaded to show that there's breast there. Okay, now there's different ways you can do this. She's kind of straight, so it's going to be kind of bunched equal on both sides. If she was kind of curved and if her body was kind of going that way, there'd be more of a crunch on this side. And depends on the shirt how much crunch you can have. You can have where the shirt is pulled taut, and if it's pulled more taut, it's going to be more like that, and it's not going to have very many. You might have a couple wrinkles in here, and that's about it. So you want to kind of just show the form. So what I like to do is maybe draw a few of these little hooks like this, and there's different kind of edges you can do, and maybe one kind of thin one, dang it, hook, want to kind of hook back. I'm too far away from my drawing to actually make it right. Something like that. No, damn. Okay, this coming this way is difficult for me for some reason. Okay, something like that. And I might have a little one there, kind of coming up. And then also it's important when you come around that you have little bunches here. This is the end of the shirt, and you can even show it with a little wrinkle if you wanted to. But I think it's important to come out of out on the outside of the body. Remember, because this is going around her body too, so you want to kind of show a little bit of the bunch there, where it's going around her body and bunching them at the end. And then you might want to have a wrinkle coming up this way, and this wrinkle here is kind of a triangle wrinkle. It's not quite an indent. Like, remember we talked about Pac-Man wrinkle? It's not quite. This is more of a hook, kind of triangle hook. So it's not a. And maybe show like that part of the thing that's coming up like that. So you don't want too many wrinkles. Just something quick like that, and then erase the under drawing. And then you can have this be a short sleeve or a long sleeve. It's up to you. And you can have, let's say a couple wrinkles like that where they pull, because it's kind of being, these are sheer wrinkles on the edge though, and that's what it kind of looks like on the edge. And then it's going to maybe kind of bunch up here because it's going to be looser here, and so you're going to have a little bit of man, once again I should really, what I'm going to do? I am going to totally take this and reduce the size so I don't have to zoom in so dang much. Okay, so have a little bit of bunching, especially at the where it's bent here. You'll have kind of some bunching there. There's different kinds of hooks and or just lines that you can do, something like that. Then I'm gonna kind of come down. I might have a little bit of maybe a little how actually do the line work and then kind of go like this. This will be a, there we go, and that's actually kind of a tube. And then if I can have some bunching up at the end here. This will be this kind of, that's a dent going inwards. I want to show that by having a little bit of shading. I can maybe show another one there, and then have it have this kind of end. Actually, I'd rather have it kind of bunched up there more, and then coming and bunching up there. That way, kind of fit her hand right. Okay, so that would be how you do it. Practicing where they show up. You know that you're gonna have bunching on a sleeve. The bunching is mainly going to happen at the elbow and at the wrist, depending on what kind of shirt it is. On the torso, the bunching is mainly going to happen in the bend of the waist, where you have that part of the waist there. So right above the belly button, that's where you're going to have most of the crunching on your shirts. Then of course you'll have a little bit of build up at the end of the shirt, depending on how long the shirt is. When you get towards the end, you'll have a little bunching up because it's being stopped, unless the shirt's pulled down tight, like the person just pulled the shirt down tight. You'll have a little bit of bunching underneath the breast, like if it's a female, and if it's a male, you might have a couple of tension stretches, or we'll just call them stretch folds. And there's different kinds of stretch folds. You have stretch folds you can represent as lines in comic books. You have stretch folds you can represent as tubes, like that, where there's going to be shading on both sides, and maybe a little bit in the middle if you actually want to shade it. And then there's the tense or the stretch folds that go over each other. So you have one fold here, and the fold goes over it like that. And so that this is actually overlapping that, so there'll be a little bit of shade like that. Okay, probably easier just for me to erase that. And I'm just about out of time, so that covers some of the folds and where they happen and why in a practical application. And as I continue this series, I'm going to continue drawing different kinds of clothing, and then showing where the folds come up and why they're coming up, because it's being tensed here, it's being tugged or pulled by the breast. The breasts are coming out and stretching all the material here, so there's not any wrinkles really in the breast, but they're going to bunch around here because that's where the breasts are rolling back over, and you have bunching there. Okay, so this video is over. I'm out of time. Thank you for watching. Click the thumbs up button.